The tall glass towers of Zephyr Prime were flashing red warning lights everywhere. Chief Xenobiologist Kala, 7 ran as fast as her 6 legs could carry her through the old computer rooms deep under the city. Her people were dying, and she was looking for something that might not even be real. The Vorthan hegemony was like a giant monster eating everything in its path. These evil aliens had already destroyed 11 of the 12 worlds that belonged to Kala 7's people, the Zephyrians. Now only a few small colonies and this last city were left. Everyone knew they would all be dead within days. Kala 7's 6 eyes glowed blue as she searched through thousands of years of old stories and records. Her thin fingers moved quickly across the ancient computers, looking for anything that could help them. Most of her people had given up hope, but she kept searching. Then she found it. Hidden in the oldest files were stories about a species that lived far away in a dangerous part of the galaxy. The stories seemed too crazy to be true, but they were all she had left. She grabbed the files and ran to the emergency council meeting. The council members looked tired and scared. Their beautiful, colorful skin had turned pale gray with fear. Some were already saying goodbye to their families. Council leader Nethprime looked up when Kala 7 burst into the room. His large head membrane was shaking with worry. "Did you find anything in the old records that can help us?" Kala 7 took a deep breath. "I found stories about a species called humans. The old records say they live on a planet called Earth, somewhere in a place called the Sol System." The other council members started whispering to each other. Some laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh people make when they hear something impossible. "What makes these humans special?" asked Council Member Vex 9, her voice full of doubt. Kala 7 activated the hologram display in the center of the room. Ancient images appeared, showing a blue and green planet with white clouds. According to these records, Earth is classified as a Class 12 hazard world. That means it's one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The council members gasped. Most planets were Class 1 or Class 2, meaning they were safe and comfortable. A Class 12 planet was supposed to be impossible to live on. The stories say that humans evolved in a place where everything tries to kill them, Kala 7 continued. Their planet has violent weather that can change in minutes. It has earthquakes that can destroy entire cities. The gravity is so strong that it would crush most of us. And yet, somehow, these humans not only survived but became the dominant species on their world. Nethprime's membrane quivered even more. That sounds impossible. No species could survive on a world like that. That's what I thought too, Kala 7 said. But the old records describe them as incredibly strong and tough. They say humans can lift objects many times their own weight. They can run for hours without getting tired. They can heal from injuries that would kill most other species. Council member Zek 4 stood up, his 4 arms waving in frustration. Even if these humans are real, why would they help us? We have nothing to offer them. Kala 7 looked around the room at her fellow Zephyrians. These were some of the smartest beings in the galaxy. They had created beautiful art, amazing technology, and peaceful societies. But they were not fighters. They had never needed to be, until now. The records also say that humans have something called empathy, she said quietly. It means they care about others, even strangers. The stories tell of humans risking their lives to save people they had never met before. Nethprime slowly shook his head. Fairy tales and old stories won't save us from the Vorthan's plasma cannons. These humans probably don't even exist. Kala 7 felt her heart sinking, but she wasn't ready to give up. Maybe you're right. Maybe these are just stories our ancestors made up. But what if they're not? What if there really are humans out there? What if they would help us if they knew we were in trouble? The room was quiet for a long moment. Outside, they could hear the sounds of families packing their few belongings, preparing to evacuate to the underground shelters. Everyone knew the shelters wouldn't protect them for long. "We're going to die anyway," Kala 7 said, her voice stronger now. The Vorthons will be here in 3 days. Our weapons can't hurt their ships. Our shields can't stop their attacks. But maybe, just maybe, if we send a message to these humans, they might come to help us. Neth Prime looked at the other council members. They all looked tired and defeated, but he could see a tiny spark of hope in their eyes. What kind of message would we send? He asked. Kala, 7 had already thought about this. We tell them the truth. We tell them we're a peaceful people who are about to be destroyed by an evil empire. We tell them we need help. And we offer them everything we have, all our knowledge, all our technology, all our art and culture. Maybe that will be enough. The council voted. It was close, but they decided to try Kala 7's plan. They had nothing left to lose. Kala 7 worked through the night, preparing the message. She included everything about their civilization, their history, their values, their desperate situation. She added the coordinates to their location and a complete database of Zephyrian science and technology. As the sun rose over Zephyr Prime, the powerful transmission array sent the message racing across space toward the Sol system. It would take months to reach Earth, if Earth even existed. The message was simple: we are dying. Please help us. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, looking at the big screen that showed words no human had ever seen before. The message had arrived 6 months ago, and it had changed everything on Earth. For the first time in human history, they knew they weren't alone in the universe. The alien message had been detected by the Deep Space Listening Station on the Moon. At first, the scientists thought it was just random noise from space. But when they ran it through the computers, they realized it was actually a language. Someone was trying to talk to them. It took weeks to figure out what the message said. The aliens had been smart enough to include pictures and math in their transmission, which helped human linguists understand their language. When they finally translated it, the message was heartbreaking. A peaceful alien race called the Zephyrians was being wiped out by something called the Vorthon hegemony. These Zephyrians had sent their message as a last desperate hope, not even knowing if humans were real. They were offering everything they had in exchange for help. The message included terrible videos showing what the Vorthons were doing to innocent alien families. Entire cities were being destroyed. Millions of aliens were dying. It was like watching the worst parts of human history happening all over again, but this time to gentle creatures who had never hurt anyone. Commander Lisa Hayes walked up to Jake, holding a tablet with the latest reports. She was one of the best officers in the Earth Defense Force, and Jake trusted her completely. Sir, the fleet is ready. 847 ships are waiting for your orders. We've got everything from heavy battleships to cargo vessels loaded with medical supplies. Jake looked out at the massive fleet floating in space around Earth. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. But this wasn't about conquering territory or fighting for resources. This was about saving innocent lives. What about Captain Mike Reynolds and his volunteers? Jake asked. Lisa smiled slightly. His Merchant Marine Division is ready to go, sir. 200 civilian ships volunteered to make the journey. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even some old mining vessels. Their captains all said the same thing: no species should face extinction alone. Jake felt proud of his fellow humans. When the government had asked for volunteers to help the aliens, the response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of people had signed up to make the dangerous journey across space. Most of them had never been in a fight before, but they were willing to risk everything to help strangers. The politicians back on Earth had argued for months about what to do. Some said it wasn't humanity's problem. Others worried it might be a trap. A few even suggested that maybe the Vorthons were the good guys, and they were only getting one side of the story. But then more messages arrived from Zephyrian space. Videos of families being separated. Images of beautiful cities turned into smoking ruins. Children crying for parents who would never come home. After seeing those pictures, public opinion on Earth changed overnight. President Martinez had given Jake his orders 3 days ago. "Admiral Morrison, you have permission to take our fleet and do whatever it takes to help these aliens. Show the galaxy what humanity stands for." Jake turned to his communications officer. "Lieutenant Thompson, signal all ships in the fleet. Tell them we're about to make history." The young officer nodded and began sending messages to every ship in the Armada. On 847 different bridges, captains and crews prepared for a journey that would take 6 months. "This is Admiral Morrison speaking to all ships," Jake announced over the fleet-wide communication system. "6 months ago, we received a message that changed everything we thought we knew about the universe. We learned that we're not alone, and we learned that there are people out there who need our help." He paused, thinking about the Zephyrians who were probably hiding in underground shelters right now, waiting to die. "The beings who sent us that message are peaceful scientists and artists. They've never hurt anyone. But they're being murdered by an empire that believes might makes right. They reached out to us because they had nowhere else to turn." Jake could see other ships in the fleet through the bridge windows. Each one was filled with humans who had volunteered to risk their lives for aliens they'd never met. "We're going to war for people we've never seen," he continued. "We're traveling across the galaxy to fight an enemy we know nothing about. Some of you might be scared. That's okay. Some of you might be wondering if this is the right thing to do. Let me tell you, it is." Commander Hayes stood next to him, reading the responses coming in from the other ships. Every captain was reporting ready for departure. "In 6 months, we're going to arrive in Zephyrian space," Jake said. "We're going to show the Vorthan hegemony what happens when they pick on innocent people. We're going to show them that humanity doesn't abandon those who need help." The massive fleet began to move. 847 ships, carrying 400,000 humans, started their engines and prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. "Engage jump drives," Jake ordered. Space twisted around the human armada as they disappeared in flashes of blue light, beginning the long journey to save a civilization that had given up hope. Behind them, Earth continued spinning peacefully, not knowing that its children were about to change the galaxy forever. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same. Captain Tom Bradley gripped the controls of his shuttle as it dropped through the thick clouds surrounding Zephyr Prime. Behind him sat 12 other humans, including doctors, translators, and Ambassador Rachel Cooper. They were about to become the first humans to ever meet an alien species face to face. Tom had been flying military shuttles for 15 years, but his hands were shaking slightly as he piloted the craft toward the landing pad. Through the front window, he could see the alien city spread out below them. The buildings were unlike anything on Earth. They looked like they were made of crystal and light, twisting upward in graceful spirals that seemed to dance in the wind. "Landing pad is coming up," Tom announced to his passengers. "Everyone ready for this?" Dr. Peterson, the mission's chief medical officer, checked his equipment one more time. "As ready as we can be for meeting aliens, I guess." Rachel Cooper, who had been chosen as humanity's first ambassador to another species, was looking out the window with wonder. She was a former diplomat who had spent years negotiating peace treaties on Earth. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The shuttle touched down gently on a platform that seemed to be made of some kind of glowing metal. Almost immediately, Tom could see movement outside. The aliens were coming to meet them. "Remember everyone," Rachel said as they prepared to exit the shuttle, "slow movements only. We don't know how they might react to sudden gestures." Tom opened the shuttle door, and the first thing that hit them was the smell. The air smelled like flowers and something else they couldn't identify. It wasn't unpleasant, just completely alien. The first Zephyrian who approached them was clearly trying to look brave, but Tom could see she was nervous too. She was barely as tall as his chest, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her 6 eyes were arranged in 2 rows across her face, and they were all focused on the humans with obvious curiosity and fear. "I am Kala, 7, the alien said through a small device that translated her words into English. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. We were not certain you would actually come. Rachel stepped forward slowly, keeping her movements gentle. I'm Ambassador Rachel Cooper, representing the people of Earth. We received your message, and we came as quickly as we could. Several other Zephyrians had gathered around, but they stayed farther back. Tom noticed that they seemed to be having trouble just standing up straight. Their thin legs were shaking with the effort of supporting their own weight. Dr. Peterson whispered to Tom, the gravity here is almost exactly the same as Earth's. But look at them, they can barely handle it. They must have evolved on a world with much lighter gravity. Kala, 7 was staring up at Rachel with her 6 eyes wide with amazement. Your people actually volunteered to come here? To help strangers? Rachel nodded, which caused several of the Zephyrians to take a quick step backward. Even that small movement seemed to frighten them. When someone asks for help, we help, Rachel said simply. That's what we do. Tom watched the aliens' reactions to this statement. They looked at each other with expressions that seemed to show complete disbelief. Through their translators, he could hear them whispering to each other in their musical language. Colonel James Parker, who was leading the military escort, had been quietly observing the Zephyrians since they landed. He activated his communication device and spoke quietly into it. Control, this is Parker on the ground. Recommend all ground units switch to minimum power settings when they deploy. These people are incredibly delicate. I'm worried that even our standard equipment might accidentally hurt them. Admiral Jake Morrison's voice came back through the comm. Understood, Colonel. Pass the word to all units, treat these aliens like they're made of glass. Tom looked up at the sky, where he knew the human fleet was taking positions around the remaining Zephyrian worlds. 847 human ships were spreading out to protect planets they had never seen before, filled with people they had never met. From space, the human vessels must have looked terrifying to the aliens. Human ships were built like flying fortresses, thick armor, heavy weapons, and designed to take damage and keep fighting. They were painted in dark colors and had sharp, angular designs that looked aggressive and military. The Zephyrian ships, from what Tom could see in the spaceports around the city, were completely different. They were beautiful, with smooth curves and bright colors. They looked more like works of art than vehicles. But they also looked fragile, like they would break if you looked at them too hard. Your ships, Kala, 7 said, looking up at the sky nervously, they are very large. Rachel smiled gently. They're designed to protect people. That's what they're here to do, protect you and your people. Dr. Peterson had been scanning the aliens with his medical equipment. Ambassador, their bone density is about 40% lower than ours. Their muscle mass is maybe 20% of what we'd expect for their size. They're built for a much more peaceful world than Earth. Another Zephyrian approached, moving very carefully. This one wore what looked like official robes and had more elaborate markings on his skin. I am Council Leader Neth Prime, he said through his translator. We cannot believe you are really here. The old record spoke of humans, but we thought they were just stories. Tom stepped forward slightly. We're real, and we're here to help. But I have to ask, are you all having trouble with the gravity here? Kala 7's 6 eyes blinked in what might have been embarrassment. Zephyr Prime's gravity is heavier than our original homeworld. We have lived here for many generations, but it is still difficult for us. And this is comfortable gravity for humans? Neth Prime asked in amazement. Rachel nodded. Actually, it's a bit lighter than Earth's gravity. We find it quite pleasant. The Zephyrians looked at each other with expressions of pure shock. To them, the humans looked like living weapons, tall, strong, and completely comfortable in an environment that exhausted the aliens just to walk around in. But Tom could see something else in their six-eyed faces. Relief. Hope. For the first time in months, the Zephyrians were looking at something other than their own extinction. The Vorthans will be here soon, Kala 7 said quietly. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities in seconds. Rachel's expression grew serious. Then we'd better get ready for them. Don't worry, you're not alone anymore. Above them, the human fleet continued taking defensive positions, ready to face an enemy they had never fought before, in defense of people they were just meeting for the first time. The humans had crossed the galaxy for one simple reason, because someone had asked for help. The Vorthan hegemony's massive war fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where they expected to find helpless Zephyrian worlds ready for conquest. Instead, they found something that made their commanders stop and stare in confusion. Hundreds of strange, dark ships were positioned around the alien planets, and these ships looked nothing like anything the Vorthans had ever seen before. General Robert Hayes stood on the command deck of the UES Defiant, watching the enemy fleet through the main view screen. The Vorthan ships were enormous, some of them were 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel. They were painted in bright colors with sharp spikes and threatening designs meant to scare their enemies into surrendering without a fight. "Sir, we're getting communication attempts from the enemy fleet," reported Lieutenant Kelly Miller from her station. "They're demanding that we surrender immediately." Robert smiled grimly. "Tell them we're here to protect the Zephyrians. If they want to leave peacefully, now would be a good time." The Vorthan response came back quickly, and it wasn't polite. Fleet Commander Zek Prime appeared on the main screen, his reptilian face twisted with anger. The Vorthan looked like a cross between a crocodile and a giant lizard, with rows of sharp teeth and yellow eyes that glowed with rage. "Unknown species." Zek Prime roared through the translator. "You are interfering with hegemony business. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Robert stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "This is General Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to protect innocent people. You're the ones who need to leave." Zek Prime's eyes widened with what might have been amusement. "You dare threaten the mighty Vorthan hegemony? We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your primitive ships will be destroyed in minutes." "We'll see about that," Robert replied, then turned to his weapons officer. "All ships, prepare for battle. Remember, we're here to protect the Zephyrians, not to conquer anyone. Disable enemy ships when possible, but don't hesitate to use full force if necessary." The first Vorthan attack came without warning. Dozens of bright plasma beams shot out from their ships, lighting up space like deadly fireworks. The Vorthans expected these powerful energy weapons to slice through human ships like hot knives through butter. Instead, something incredible happened. The human kinetic barriers, invisible force fields designed to stop fast-moving objects, absorbed the plasma beams completely. The energy weapons that had destroyed countless alien civilizations simply splashed against human defenses like water hitting a wall. "What is this?" Zek Prime screamed over the communication channel. "How are their shields stopping our plasma cannons?" Lieutenant Miller, who was monitoring all enemy communications, couldn't help but grin. "Sir, they seem really confused about our defenses." Robert nodded. "That's because they've never fought anyone who understands both energy and kinetic weapons. Fire all railguns, show them what real firepower looks like." The human response was devastating. Instead of energy weapons, human ships fired solid metal projectiles using magnetic railguns. These chunks of metal, moving at incredible speeds, completely ignored the Vorthan energy shields and smashed into their ships like giant hammers. The Vorthan shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser beams, were useless against simple metal bullets moving really, really fast. Within minutes, several Vorthan ships were crippled or destroyed. "Their weapons are primitive." Zek Prime snarled over the comm channels, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're using solid projectiles. How are they penetrating our defenses?" Captain Janet Rodriguez, commanding one of the human destroyers, laughed as she watched Vorthan ships explode under human fire. "Because energy shields don't stop bullets, genius." While the space battle raged above, Major David Thompson was leading human ground forces in their first combat against alien enemies. The Vorthans had already landed troops on Zephyr Prime, and they were advancing toward the cities where millions of Zephyrian civilians were hiding. The Vorthan soldiers were impressive-looking creatures. They stood 8 feet tall, with thick armor and weapons that could melt through solid rock. For centuries, they had terrorized smaller alien species just by showing up. Most civilizations surrendered the moment they saw Vorthan warriors. But when the first group of Vorthan soldiers encountered Major Thompson's human marines, something unexpected happened. The humans were not only unimpressed by the alien size and scary appearance, they were actually bigger and more heavily armed. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Bobby Chen as his squad spotted Vorthan troops advancing toward a Zephyrian refugee camp. 12 enemy soldiers, moving toward the civilians. The Vorthans expected the strange alien soldiers to run away or at least hesitate when they saw the mighty hegemony warriors. Instead, the humans immediately took cover and started shooting back with weapons that made terrible loud noises and fired solid bullets instead of energy beams. Worse yet, when Vorthan weapons managed to hit human soldiers, the humans didn't die or retreat like other species. They kept fighting, even when wounded. Some of them seemed to get more determined and aggressive when they got hurt. "Squad 2, flank left," Thompson ordered over his radio. "Squad 3, provide covering fire. We need to get between those Vorthans and the civilian shelter." The human tactics were completely different from anything the Vorthans had faced before. Instead of trying to look scary or intimidating, the humans worked together like a machine. They moved quickly, used cover effectively, and seemed to care more about protecting the Zephyrian civilians than about their own safety. Captain Luis Morales, leading another group of Marines, watched in amazement as his men charged directly at a group of Vorthan soldiers who were threatening a school full of young Zephyrians. "They don't retreat," a panicked Vorthan commander reported over their radio. "When we wound them, they become more dangerous." What kind of species are these? The answer was becoming clear to both sides. Humans were a species that had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them. They were used to fighting for survival, and they had turned warfare into a science. More importantly, they fought not for conquest or glory, but to protect others. Private Jessica Torres, pinned down by Vorthan fire, saw a group of young Zephyrians trapped in a building that was about to collapse. Without hesitation, she left her safe position and ran through enemy fire to reach them. "Torres, what are you doing?" her sergeant shouted over the radio. "Getting the kids out, Sarge," she replied, scooping up 2 terrified young aliens and carrying them to safety while bullets flew around her. This was something the Vorthans had never seen before. In their culture, soldiers fought for their commanders and for the glory of the hegemony. The idea of risking your life to save strangers was completely foreign to them. By the end of the first day of fighting, the Vorthan forces were in full retreat both in space and on the ground. Their energy weapons were useless against human technology, their soldiers couldn't match human tactics, and they had no answer for humans who seemed to get stronger and more determined when the fighting got tough. Fleet Commander Zek Prime stared at the tactical display showing his defeated forces, unable to understand what had gone wrong. For the first time in hegemony history, they had met an enemy they couldn't intimidate, couldn't overpower, and couldn't understand. The humans weren't just winning, they were doing it while protecting civilians and treating prisoners with mercy. It was a kind of warfare the Vorthans had never imagined possible. The war that was supposed to last for months was over in just 18 days. The Vorthan hegemony, which had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years, found itself completely defeated by a species they had never heard of before. Their mighty war machine, built on fear and intimidation, crumbled when it met opponents who simply refused to be afraid. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the main conference room of the UES Defiant, looking across the table at the alien who had once been the most feared military commander in the galaxy. Supreme Commander Zek Prime looked nothing like the terrifying warrior who had demanded humanity's surrender just 18 days ago. His bright scales had turned a dull gray color, and his once proud posture was slumped in defeat. Around the table sat representatives from both sides. Ambassador Rachel Cooper was there for humanity, along with several human military officers. The Zephyrian leaders, including Kala, 7, watched everything with amazement. They still couldn't believe that their desperate message had brought salvation from across the galaxy. The Vorthan hegemony officially surrenders all claims to Zephyrian space, Zek Prime said through his translator, his voice barely above a whisper. We acknowledge defeat. Jake nodded professionally. This wasn't a moment for celebration or gloating. It was simply the end of a job that needed to be done. Good, Jake replied. Your forces will withdraw immediately from all Zephyrian worlds and colonies. You'll also release any prisoners you've taken and provide compensation for the damage you've caused. Zek Prime's yellow eyes looked up at Jake with something that might have been confusion. What tribute do you require from the hegemony? What worlds do you claim as your prize for victory? Jake looked puzzled and glanced at Ambassador Rachel, who seemed equally confused by the question. Tribute? Jake asked. We don't want any tribute. We want you to leave these people alone and stop attacking peaceful civilizations. That's it. The silence in the room was complete. Zek Prime stared at Jake as if he had said something impossible. In the Vorthan culture, conquest always meant taking everything from the defeated enemy. Winners took their planets, their resources, their people as slaves. That's how the galaxy had always worked. You don't want to rule over the hegemony? Zek Prime asked, his translator struggling with concepts it had never been programmed to handle. Rachel leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. We don't want to rule over anyone. We just want you to stop hurting innocent people. Go back to your own worlds and leave everyone else alone. Kala, 7, who had been silent throughout the meeting, spoke up. This is why we sent the message to you, she said to Jake. The old records said that humans were different from other species. They said you helped others without expecting anything in return. Jake smiled at the small alien scientist. The old records were right. Within weeks of the hegemony's surrender, something unprecedented began happening across Zephyrian space. Instead of celebrating their victory and going home, the humans started rebuilding everything the Vorthans had destroyed. Captain Betty Wilson stood on the bridge of the UES constructor, watching as her engineering teams worked alongside Zephyrian civilians to rebuild the capital city of Zephyr Prime. Human construction robots worked next to delicate alien artists, restoring buildings that had been reduced to rubble just a month ago. Captain, we've got the main hospital back online, reported Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez over the comm. The human medical team is already working with Zephyrian doctors to treat the wounded. Betty nodded, watching through her viewscreen as human medics carefully carried injured Zephyrians on stretchers designed for their smaller, more fragile bodies. Dr. Peterson and his team had been working around the clock to understand alien biology so they could help save lives. The galaxy was watching all of this with complete confusion. Never before had a conquering species spent its time building schools and hospitals for the people they had just saved. Most alien civilizations couldn't understand why the humans weren't taking advantage of their victory. But word was spreading. Other species that had been bullied by the hegemony began sending messages to Earth, asking if the humans might be willing to help them too. Pirates who had been raiding peaceful trade routes suddenly found themselves facing human patrol ships that appeared out of nowhere to protect merchant vessels. 6 months after the war ended, Captain Lisa Hayes found herself commanding something that had never existed before in galactic history. The UES Defender led a mixed fleet of ships from 17 different alien species, all working together to protect peaceful civilizations from those who would harm them. Status report from the patrol groups, announced Lieutenant Kevin Murphy from his station. Sector 7 is clear. The Zephyrian science vessel successfully completed its research mission without any pirate interference. Lisa nodded, looking out at the incredible sight through her bridge windows. Human ships flew in formation with vessels from dozens of different worlds. There were the elegant, crystalline ships of the Zephyrians, the bioorganic vessels of the plant-like Verdanians, and the geometric craft of the mathematical axiom species. They called it the Terran Protection Compact, though most species just called it the Alliance. It wasn't an empire, because humans didn't want to rule over anyone. It was something new, a group of protectors and those they protected, all working together to make sure that what happened to the Zephyrians never happened to anyone else. Kala, 7, who had requested assignment to a human vessel to study these fascinating Deathworlders, approached Lisa at her command chair. The small alien scientist had become the ship's xenobiology officer and had proven invaluable in helping humans understand the dozens of species they now worked with. Captain Hayes, Kala, 7 said, her 6 eyes bright with curiosity, I've been thinking about something. What's that, Kala? Lisa asked, using the shortened name the alien had adopted for easier human pronunciation. The other species in the galaxy, they're all confused by humans. They keep asking me to explain why you help others without taking anything in return. They don't understand how you can be so dangerous in battle but so gentle in peace. Lisa thought about this for a moment, watching a group of human engineers teaching alien technicians how to repair their damaged ships. Funny how that works, she said finally. The galaxy's most dangerous species turned out to be its most reliable friends. Kala's 6 eyes seemed to gleam with something approaching pride. She had been studying humans for months now and was beginning to understand them better than most aliens ever would. Perhaps that's what makes you truly dangerous to people like the hegemony, she said thoughtfully. You actually mean what you say. When you promise to protect someone, you really do it. When you say you don't want to conquer anyone, you really don't. In a galaxy full of lies and broken promises, truth itself becomes a weapon. Lisa smiled, understanding what her alien friend meant. The Vorthan hegemony and others like them relied on fear, deception, and the assumption that everyone was as selfish as they were. When they encountered a species that genuinely kept its word and helped others without expecting anything in return, their entire worldview collapsed. Over the next few years, the Terran Protection Compact grew larger and stronger. More species joined the alliance, not as conquered subjects, but as willing partners in building a better galaxy. Trade flourished under human protection, scientific knowledge was shared freely, and for the first time in thousands of years, peaceful civilizations could develop without fear of conquest. The era of galactic bullies was over. Pirates found their raids interrupted by human patrol fleets. Aggressive empires discovered that attacking peaceful worlds meant facing the combined might of dozens of species working together. Slave traders learned that their ships would be hunted down by relentless human captains who took the liberation of captives as a personal mission. The age of the human protector had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. What had started with a desperate message from a dying civilization had become the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization, one based on protection rather than conquest, on cooperation rather than domination, and on the simple human belief that when someone asks for help, you help them. The humans had kept their promise, and in doing so, they had changed everything.